I brought this up at the last Clemency meeting because I strongly feel as a prosecutor for nearly 20 years that this is about fundamental principles. I believe every felony is important, and I believe that if you are convicted of a felony, that there should be an appropriate waiting time before you have your rights restored, and I firmly believe that someone should have to ask to have their rights restored. That is a privilege in our country, and it is part of our Constitution, and I feel very strongly about it. And I can tell you, with an appropriate waiting time and with someone coming and asking to have their rights restored, I can tell you, I firmly believe you're going to see a lot more sheriffs, a lot more law enforcement officers, a lot more prosecutors be willing to sign off on these, because that's what we want to see as law enforcement, that people can become productive members of society. Now, you heard the decoupling issue there. That's something that's going through the legislature, because I don't think that a felony conviction should help you get a job, nor should it hurt you in getting a job. I think they should be two completely separate, distinct issues. And I had a great meeting with the NAACP and the ACLU, and I talked to them about that issue to help folks get jobs. And I'm a huge advocate of reentry when you are released from prison. Jacksonville has one of the, I think, prototype programs regarding reentry, and I think that's very, very important to help people get a job, to help them find a place to live after they have served their time. But I do believe that people are absolutely on their best behavior when they're on supervision, and that you have to have a waiting period to show that you can become a productive member of society.
This is most states in America though do not have this policy, and in fact this goes back in the Constitution back into the Reconstruction era. And I'm just, what's so special that Florida is doing something that most other states in the country are not doing? And can you explain that and respond to the comment about it, that you're putting back in place something that's quote a stain on the state because it did come out of Jim Crow?
Well, I disagree with you that it's a stain on the state. I feel that it's going to be a tremendous asset for law enforcement. I think that again, I stress the fact that I firmly believe that if you are convicted of a felony, and any felony is serious. A felony is a felony, and if you are convicted of a felony, you should, number one, have to ask to have your rights restored. Nowhere in our Constitution does it say that that's automatic. You should have to ask for your rights to be restored, and there should be an appropriate waiting period to show that you can be a productive member of society.
Already there's a backlog of almost 200,000. There's, and under what's limited automatic restoration of rights up until today, it took up to 2 years for felons to get those rights restored. With the limited resources that the state has, how are you going to handle all of these applications?
And that's something I failed to mention. I'm glad you brought that up. And if you couldn't hear what she said, she asked about the current backlog. And with the 5-year waiting period now, hopefully the Parole Commission, the Clemency Board, can get rid of that backlog of all of these Category 1s. So they're going to have 5 years to get rid of that backlog. So hopefully they'll be able to get rid of that backlog, because you're right, people are waiting now anyway. So now people will have completed their sentence, then there will be an appropriate waiting period, and I believe that the cabinet is much more likely to approve. I think you're going to see a lot more of these approved after a sufficient waiting time. But hopefully this break will give the parole board time to clear up this backlog, and that's something that I plan on talking to them more about as well.
Where are the resources?